why do you think, because I think so many people are struggling in dating.
Yeah, me too.
Finding that you struggling?
No, I'm not saying I'm struggling. I'm saying I'm agreeing with your statement.
Yeah,
I think a lot 100%. Of people. I don't find it a struggle. No,
I don't imagine so. But I think it's one of those things with so many people. I think this illusion of abundance. I think there's an illusion of abundance.
Elaborate for me on what you mean by that.
I think I think for guys, I think, they may dismiss a really good girl because there's 5 other attractive girls that catches their eye.
Yeah.
I think maybe for some women, they may dismiss a decent guy on a first date because they've got 40 other matches, etc. But then I think for guys, it's like, okay, out of those women that you think are available to you, just because you can be connected to them online, that doesn't necessarily mean that
they're actually available, yeah.
Right? Or that maybe they'd even take an interest in you. I think for many women, they think, okay, I've got 40 matches, but out of that 40, maybe only 10 would actually be open to having something significant. Do you know what I mean? For whatever reason, because maybe your energy is not in alignment, maybe they're not looking for that right now, etc. So I guess my question would be, how much do you think there's an illusion of abundance, or do you think something else is playing a bigger role into why maybe we're not able to fully appreciate what's in front of us?
I think that the apps play a huge role in the issue for sure. I think that's scientifically proven. I think that's very clear. You don't have to really have to do that much research or that much reading to dig into that to see that that's clearly an illusion that plays a huge factor in the situation.
Yeah.
And I think it hurts men and women equally. What I would say though is that I think that the root of this problem really comes down to a lack of education. Typically when you look at psychology, when they discover something psychologically, it takes 3 generations for it to really take effect in society.
Right.
And I think things like attachment styles, narcissism, these are all words that have recently been lent into,
Yes.
And listen, it's not about learning so much about your attachment style that you could write a paper on it. It's more because, again, these are just boxes you can put yourself in: ADHD, depressed, man, woman, like all boxes. Listen, all just human, just working it out. It's all good.
Very true.
But I think that we have this environment where I'm meeting a lot of women that maybe they meet someone when they're young and they have a long-term relationship, maybe a marriage, maybe not a marriage, maybe buy a house together. And I just had another point in my mind that's actually quite an important one as well, but let me come back to it.
Okay.
It's about feminism in case I forget.
Okay.
So
I'll remind you.
Thank you. So I think that there's this whole thing about, yes, the abundance of choice, because typically if we were cavemen and women, you'd choose someone from your village that'd probably be like your 3rd cousin once removed or something,
Yeah, I'm glad it's not that.
Yeah, me too. But now we're in a stage where it's like, all this technology was supposed to keep us more connected, but we've got more disconnection than ever. And we've got such densely populated cities that create illusions that are not real about all sorts of things, not just dating, but the world we live in, things like population. Anyway, so there's like this whole conversation I think is lacking the education. Because if I go back to these women that are like having long-term relationships in their 20s, let's say they end the relationship sometime between 30 and 36, which seems to be a common theme. And if you know a little bit about astrology, there's a period in time in your life called a Saturn return, which happens every 29 and a half years. So between the ages of 27 and 33, it's really common that you'll either meet your soulmate or person you're going to have a long-term relationship with, or a long-term relationship can end and you'll experience a lot of very significant changes in your life between 27 and 33. And in astrology, we say the best time to get married is between 28, because you're leaving behind your south node, which is an energy the way you've come from your past life, and between 36, because 36 is when you fully settle into your north node, which is this lifetime, who you're going to be in this lifetime. And so I don't know about you, but me personally, I'm 34 years old. And I'm so pleased I didn't marry any of the people that I dated in my 20s, with no disrespect to any of them intended. I think they're all amazing. But they were not the right people for me to raise a family with. And I think that a lot of people date based upon how they feel rather than psychological education. And it's clear because if you look at society, it's a mess. We've got more divorces and broken homes and children being raised in single parent families than there has ever been.
Yep.
And it is also a really easy way for society to be attacked because it is scientifically proven, and obviously you don't have to be that intelligent to work out that a man has his protective instincts. They spike when he's got someone or something to protect, whether that be a woman, his sister, his partner, his mother, his child. Now, if we all live on a street and there's 10 houses and each of those houses has got full families in them, husband, wife, children,
Yep.
we're just going to go with the heterosexual one just for the sake of the explanation, right? Like obviously masculine and feminine roles.
Sure.
Those men are going to be inspired to protect their family. And then, so when those men come together, they'll protect that whole street,
Very
right?
true.
This is nature.
Yes.
You know? So if you've got then a bunch of broken homes and 5 of those houses have got single parents in them, usually a single mother with children, of course, I don't want to exclude single dads here because you guys are very valuable too. But it's a different way of raising the family, and therefore it's not inspiring the men to be as protective and rooted in that masculine energy. And that's like nowadays, if we look at like men, like the other day I was walking down the street and I was looking at these 2 police officers. I was thinking I could outrun you in a heartbeat, and they're like walking down the street eating Krispy Kreme, and they look like they eat a lot of Krispy Kremes more than they go to the gym. And I'm just like, what is this? I don't feel protected by you. That's mad.
Big facts.
And not only that, but when you eat like that, it produces more estrogen and less testosterone.
That's why you get grow boobs. As a guy when you get
and
really
all of that.
big.
Don't even get me started on that. So I could talk about this for hours. So so it becomes a perpetuating problem. So in terms of like, what is the root of the problem? Yes, the illusion of abundance plays into it, but also just the society that we've got. The fact that it's considered so okay to like get into relationships with somebody, like you get these relationships where people break up, get back together, break up, get back together, break up, get back together. It's toxic. Okay, you either are drawn to each other so much that there's something that keeps, you guys can't resolve that problem. So go to a therapist to resolve that conflict. So you can either resolve it together and decide we can't be together and it's not healthy, so you can move on and be with healthier partners for you, or you can resolve that conflict and have a healthy connection. But what I see a lot of people do is they'll end up like being in a relationship and it's got some problems. They don't really address it. And then they fall pregnant and they either stay together or the baby magnifies the problems and then they separate. What I'd really like to see people doing is having a little bit more education in terms of how they choose. So I want people to think more about like, what are your deal breakers? What are your must-haves and why? So like for me,
I think a lot of people have that though.
No, I don't. I don't think people have that in depth. Do you know when I ask people these questions, they'll be like, I want him to be more than 6 foot.
So that's what I mean then.
Listen, I'll tell you
so
what's on my list.
So they have it just about the wrong things.
Yeah, they're not thinking about it properly. What's on my list, right? Given that I grew up in a really abusive environment, my first thing is I want to see how you behave when you're triggered. So I need to know that you can emotionally handle yourself. So that 100%. So this is one of my number one things. This is a massive deal breaker.
Can you regulate yourself emotionally?
Listen, are you taller than 6 foot? Fine, whatever. Like if you're taller than 6 foot, great. Luckily for me, I seem to attract really tall guys, lovely, but that's not really what I'm too focused on. Like, that's wonderful stuff, but that's not high on my list. What's high on my list is, can you control yourself when you're emotional?
Yes.
Can you communicate your emotions? Can you receive from me when I am emotional? Because I feel like a lot of men, they struggle when a woman's emotional, and I understand why. Actually, let me tell you a little story because you'll like this, right?
Go on,
so I used to work with this woman once. So before I became like, spiritual and everything, I used to work in property. I worked in real estate for like 7 years, love it, I'm really good at it and would still do it. And I worked with this woman, she was Eastern European lady, she was so sweet, and she was leaving our office. She was a bit older than me and a lot calmer than me at the time, I have to say. Anyway, I'm leaving the workplace, though is she, and we decide to like have a lunch at her place, and I meet her partner and he worked for Google. And he was a really interesting guy, and we were talking about relationships, and he was telling me how much he trusted her, and he was explaining to me how he'd always had these really difficult relationships and how he'd be so attracted to the woman, and then he would get into the relationship with her and then he'd want to control her. Wants to go through her phone, wants to know where she is, what she's doing all the time. It's not possible to know where your partner is and what they're doing all the time, other than just know that they're breathing. You have to live in trust. Otherwise, it's never going to work.
Yes.
And he told me this story. I said, well, how did you break that? How did you get out of that? Because you obviously trust her like so much. And he was like, well, my mum, she told me this story. And I said, well, tell me the story. And he basically said, you need to be the rock. She's the butterfly, like what you said. Women, we're always up and down, you know. One day we're hungry, then we're horny, then we're like crying, then we see an Oxfam advert, and then we're pulling our eyes out, then we can't go to work the next day. Like, it's a lot being a woman, you know. Like, we operate on a 28 to 35 day cycle. You guys are on a 24-hour cycle, yeah?
So true.
And so for us, it's like, to go through the amount of hormones that we go through, there's only actually 12 weeks of the year where we're actually normal, where our hormones are normal. Because your hormones the week of your period is the week leading up to it, the week after it. You know, so it's just like there's 1 week of the month. There's just 1 week, and that's the happiest week. That's the horniest week. That's the hungriest week. That's the most productive week.
Right.
The rest of it, it's just like just bear with us. You know,
just chuck a dice in, see what it lands on.
Yeah, but this is why we're more emotionally in tune and developed, because we have so much going on all the time that we have to talk about it. Whereas you guys can keep a bit of a lid on it a little bit more. You know,
Yes.
so you don't have to talk about it all the time. Plus, it's not socially acceptable either, which is just a load of nonsense anyway. But. So I think that there's multiple problems. I think the way society is, I'm going to throw a conspiracy theory out there. Not that that's surprising.
I want you to tell the story. Don't forget the story.
Oh, sorry, Dad. I didn't finish the story. Right.
Finish the story.
So you got to be the rock.
waiting.
The mum says you got to be the rock as the man. And she's the butterfly. Now, if you're the rock, she's always going to fly away, come back to you, fly away, come back to you, because you're a rock, you're stable, you're consistent, you're solid. That's what she needs. That's what she wants. Right. And it's true. We will, emotionally stable and emotionally available women will always flock to a man that's consistent and stable. Like, the minute a man starts to show me inconsistency or unavailability, I just lose interest. Just do.
Yes.
Before, when I was more anxiously attached, I'd be like,
no, come back.
Don't leave me, love me.
Give me the
know?
validation.
Yeah.
I there's something that I say kind of similar to that a man is the mountain in which she crashes her emotional waves into.
100%. Please, we don't need you to cry with us. We just need you to be like, all right, babe, do you want to cuddle? Do you want a hot chocolate, or should I just be quiet?
Yeah, and that is something
that's what we need.
100%. And one thing that this took me a while to learn is that because we do want to solve your problems, when you come to us with a problem, immediately we go, okay, well, here's what we need to do. Here's you do this. And sometimes now you just want to be heard.
Sometimes we just want to cuddle.
Yeah.
You know, you'd be surprised at how much just a cuddle fixes stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes I think one of the things that happens in relationships is naturally like we parent each other a little bit, but which is obviously can be a bit of a killer for like the romance and the spice.
Yeah.
But the reality is that you do take on a lot of roles when you're in a relationship, you know, and we are all wounded children running around in adult bodies. So I think that, you know, conspiracy theory wise, not that it's conspiracy, it's true. If you look at society, you know, just, you know, things like watching porn, like, oh my God, that's going to kill your relationship. You're literally taking your sexual and your romantic energy and projecting it onto a screen. There was a study done, don't ask me by who, because I couldn't tell you that now. There was a study done where they literally asked men when they'd finished ejaculating after like masturbating to porn to write down the first feeling that they felt, and more than 80% of them wrote down the feeling of shame, which is the lowest frequency that a human can experience. To put that into perspective for some people, there was a man called David Hawkins that wrote a book called The Map of Consciousness, where he literally measures the exact frequency of feelings. So I could go and pick some fresh fruit and put it in a bowl, and that bowl would be operating at a higher frequency than a human that's feeling shame. Wow. So shame is 20,000 hertz, and like a bowl of fresh fruit, like freshly picked, would be like 50,000 hertz, which is, by the way, the same frequency as anger. So shame is the lowest frequency. So a human that's vibrating at the vibration of shame has literally got a lower frequency than a bowl of fruit.
Wow.
And that's what porn does to men. And not only that, but then so for me personally, that looks to me like an attack, because Pornhub is one in the top 10 companies in the whole world, right? In terms of their turnover. Yeah. So that tells me that we have a problem. You know, we have a problem. Now, the other thing that I think is perpetuating this problem is that men that are feeling insecure, it lowers the frequency of the men, right? Yes. But then if we think about how much it requires balls to go up to a woman that you're attracted to and ask her on a date or ask her for a number or whatever it may be. Yeah. Men that maybe feel the fear and don't know how to deal with that, or they don't have a lot of self-confidence, or they're not 6'2" and jacked, or they haven't got like a Bentley or whatever. It's an easy cop-out, isn't it? You know, to like just have a wank basically and get like your needs met.
Because essentially, before porn, men had to work to get access to women's sexuality. right? Like you would not see a woman naked unless you were having physical sex with her.
Yeah.
Now
Bring
you
back
can
those
see
days, please.
whatever you need online, 100%, and it almost
You just need
sedates
$2.99 and you're good to go.
You don't even need that. You just need an internet connection.
Yeah, literally, you don't even need that. You literally don't even need that.
You just need an internet connection.
And it's crazy because I think the reason I say that porn's an attack is because for me, the way I see this is that I don't see any positives about porn. I've had this debate with many people and I'm yet for somebody to tell me the positives of porn. Please, I want to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. But so far, no one's convinced me. And so the way I see it is that if we're taking away the men, because you're lowering the frequency of men. So
yes,
like,
you are.
I know what you said earlier about like the man needs to be masculine for the woman, but the woman needs to be submissive for the man to be in the masculine. Listen, I think it's the chicken and the egg.
Sure.
Depends on the scenario, right? Yes, the woman should be residing in her feminine, particularly when she's around him to give him the opportunity to lead as the masculine. I agree. But a woman can't be submissive and relax until she feels safe with a man.
I agree, because we all have masculine and feminine in us, and the masculine protects the feminine side of us anyway. So she feels that she has to protect herself.
It will naturally come out, of course.
I understand that.
So I think that, part of the other issue that we have in society is that we've got a lot of behaviors that make men more feminine, and we've got a lot of things that make women more masculine. I
think I agree with you, but I think a big part of it is the narrative, because absolutely. I think men are told that to be masculine is to be toxic. There are some toxic behaviors, don't get me wrong.
I'm talking about healthy masculine.
Of course, we're talking about healthy masculine. And we even celebrate, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just different. We celebrate the masculine qualities in women, and we we shame it in men. Andrew Schultz made this joke, right? He was talking about like, I think it was like a feminist march movement, and they're marching with their signs, and they're like, he was saying, you're saying that you want to be able to walk around naked and no one says anything. 100% you do that. You want to be able to sleep with guys and not call them afterwards. 100% you do that. You want to be able to get pregnant and then get rid of the baby, not take responsibility. 100% you do that. And he's like, so basically you're fighting to be the fuckboys that you complain about.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And I don't agree with it. Like, I think that none of those behaviors make the world a better place, regardless of whether men or women do it.
I agree.
And so I don't think it's about fighting to have, I mean, listen, I think the whole thing with feminism gets really misconstrued, right? Like we want to be treated equally, as in we get equal pay, etc. I don't really know that. I think the sexual movement was quite a big one, like if you think about like contraception only came around in what, like the 1940s? I'm not entirely sure.
60s.
Okay. So in the 1960s, and it's like, that was the first time that women were really able to have a sense of freedom, right? Because you were always expected to be monogamous and faithful to your husband, so your husband knew that he was raising his children. But
I think the main thing, it removed the consequence of her choosing a bad sexual mate, because she now didn't have to have his child.
Exactly.
Right? She didn't have to.
Same with abortion.
Exactly. She didn't have to be vulnerable for 9 months.
Hope you really enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full episode where that clip is from, then I want you to click right here where you can watch the full episode. And if you're ready to claim your man today, enroll in my program below, and I'll see you there. Wishing you an amazing day.